Hey guys, it's January 1st of 2025, and this morning I passed the MongoDB Developer Associate Exam, and I'm here to show you how to do the same thing. So let's dive right in. First, I want to talk about what is not on it, because I got a lot of mixed information while I was going through the web trying to figure out what to expect. It no longer covers sharding or replication. So a lot of the information that you find, a lot of the practice questions that you find are going to have this in there. It is no longer included on the exam. Also, there's no transaction questions on the exam either. These are the topics that it covers, and they are clearly laid out in the study guide. But let's come over here. This is MongoDB University. You can go here on the MongoDB Associate Developer Exam section and choose a learning path. The cool thing about this learning path is it does cover what is on the exam. It does a pretty good job. You have to supplement it a little bit with a bit more work. And when you go through and do this, you will actually get 50% off. If you're an educator and you have an email address from an organization like a school or a boot camp and you teach Mongo, then you can use the educator program. So it is 53 questions, 75 minutes long, and it's pretty easy to get it done in that time. It took me 44 minutes to go through it. And I didn't feel rushed other than the normal nerves and everything. So here we go. We have this certification program guide and this developer exam study guide. So let's go look at this. It is over here. This does a pretty good job of telling you what's in there. Scroll on through scoring, do. The developer learning path, I used that. I did not use any of these. These practice questions, though, these are good. Let's pull this out. Deep dive video, it talks a little bit about what's going on. That can be something good. Of course, you always have to read the documentation. I didn't go to either of these. Here we have the exam objectives. Overview document model. It's the same thing that I have up here. Those are the exact things that it covers. And so this gives you a pretty good idea of what to look out for. I did have 2 questions on the VSON types and CRUD. Big thing with CRUD is know the syntax. Remember that it's all camel case. It's going to give you things with underscore and other little bits that are just a little bit different. Just pay attention to your capitalization and such. And as long as you know the syntax, you're going to be pretty well set up for the CRUD initially. And indexes. Absolutely got to know those. And we'll talk about them in a little bit more depth. Actually, let's go ahead and do that. So as you go through the indexes, you want to know the syntax for creating an index. And you also want to know which index is going to be best for a given query. Big thing to remember about predicting this is that the fields in your index need to be in the same order as the fields in your query. And if they can be both going down or both going up, but if you have one of them that is being sorted down, one is being sorted up, then they need to match, so to speak. So if you have in a query where you're sorting name ascending, then you're also searching for, say, age ascending. Then a index which has name ascending and age ascending will work. An index that has name descending and age descending will also work. However, you can't have one ascending and one descending if they're both going in the same direction. So it needs to mirror in that way. Also, they have to be in the same order. As long as you understand that much about the indexes, then if you can remember the proper syntax for creating one, then you're going to be pretty good. And data modeling. This is one that I know I lost a few points on because to me, the questions weren't entirely clear. It's like, which one of these is going to be the most effective or the most efficient? And I thought, well, one's going to be the most efficient as far as speed, but the other one's going to be the most efficient as far as size because I don't know how large that array could get. We could exceed the size limit for a MongoDB document. And so the data modeling there, I think, now if we come over here to the learning path, because we have these learning paths. Here we go, the certification learning paths, and you go down and find one for what you're doing. So we have MongoDB PHP developer, Python developer, and I completed the one with MongoDB Node.js developer path. So whichever one you're using, go through and pick the one for that developer pathway. And as you go through it, there's going to be a section on MongoDB and document model data modeling intro. But if you go ahead and pull up the other learning path on data modeling, and you come down and check out this data modeling, data relationships, and you watch this go through it, I think that this one little section is going to really help set you up better with the data modeling in the exam so that you can get an idea of how they are thinking through it. All right, back over here, tools and tooling, not a whole lot on there. Atlas sample data set, you're using Data Explorer. So on this one, you can, if you understand anything at all about Atlas, you can pretty well figure it out through reasonable deduction which answer is the correct one. So don't spend a whole lot on this. And that's only 2%. And so 2% out of, what was it, 57 questions, that's one question. Not a big deal. Drivers. Okay, understand your drivers. You're going to have a few questions in there that are like, what is it for? And why is it beneficial? They're going to ask you questions about pools. So make sure you know the syntax for creating a pool and just a little bit about how it works. You're going to have maybe 2 questions on that. And the components of a URI string. Now, again, your questions could be a little bit different from mine. So I'm speaking on my experience this morning to define the correct syntax. Now, this document, it's easy. I go through and try to highlight this. It highlights them all individually because each one of these words, and sometimes each word itself, each one of these words is in its own div. And some of these words are actually split up so that each part of the word is in a separate div. And that is very frustrating if you go to try to copy paste this into anything. So if you want to do that, come over here and get the PDF version. Just download it so you copy paste it out of there. Now, we come on over certification practice questions. Okay, here we go. These practice questions are good. They are a good representation of what you're going to actually find on the exam. So I think that Mongo did a good job on this one. So let's just click get started. Let's jump in here real quick and start quiz. And we're going to see that it starts off in the same sort of format. Which numeric type is valid? MongoDB BSON. It's going to be a 32-bit integer. Okay, and then go on. Now, if you copy paste these, because I went through, I did all of this on my very first go round, I missed a few questions. So I copy pasted them into ChatGPT and asked it to explain the answer. When I did that, oftentimes ChatGPT also got it wrong. ChatGPT would not ace this exam. So if you're going to go through and get some of these explained, then what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to mention which answer is the correct answer, and then ask it to explain it to you from that point of view. Because remember, ChatGPT, it is not perfect, it is not omnipotent, it does not know everything. And if you can have it reference you, documentation or anything that gives it to you from an official source, then that's going to be excellent as well. Or you can just take that official source, and if there's something you don't quite understand, have ChatGPT explain that to you in greater depth. But if you go through and you practice these, you're going to get a good idea of where your information is lacking. And then you can go have ChatGPT throw you a bunch of questions. And again, the questions aren't great. And most of the time, the answer is obvious, even if you don't understand what's going on. But it does get you used to reading that syntax. And even if the question isn't challenging you, you're looking at it and you're seeing why that is the correct answer. So it's still beneficial. So learning pathways. Yep, we went over that. Cool. So now over here, a lot of what you're going to see is going to be predict your outcome. So you're going to be looking at a query and a small data set of maybe 4 to 6 lines of entries in the database, and then you have to predict what the outcome of that query is going to be. Know the correct syntax, because sometimes it's just going to trip you up with camel case versus snake case or whatever else, or maybe there's a comma where there should be a period. And the driver, know just a little bit about your driver. There's a few questions there. Syntax difference between Mongosh and your driver. There may not be any differences that you're going to see, but make sure to specifically look that up and see if there is for whatever language you're working with. Text search. There's going to be a couple of questions on there about text search. So make sure you have some familiarity with it. And aggregation, there's going to be several. So as long as you understand the basics of the aggregation pipeline, you're going to be all right. And search. And search is only used on Atlas. It can't be used for the drivers just yet. But know a little bit about that. It does tie in with text search, and you do have to have text indexing in order to be able to use this or this. So know that much. And syntax for index creation. Know that one. There'll be I saw a couple on there that looked right, but maybe they had a comma where there should have been a period. In fact, this is one where I saw that specifically. And the syntax for CRUD. And one thing that I remember is on all of the methods, everything has a one and a mini, like update one, update mini, except for find. Find was find or find one, but there wasn't a find mini. And don't get confused by material in other places that's showing you deprecated methods like delete, because there's delete one, there's delete mini, but just regular delete has been deprecated. And I found that in a lot of resources. I even bought 2 Udemy courses to go over and do this, and I despised them both. They were of no help. Array methods, understand those. You have things like $n and $and. Just understand the slight differences between them. I found that just writing out the methods and writing a description beside them was enough to solidify it in my brain for passing this. And how do you access nested objects? This one is a little bit tricky because when you're looking at an object inside of an array, you're actually looking at the name of that array, the key, dot the attribute inside of the object. So that one can take just a minute to wrap your head around, but then you're pretty good to go. And the best index for a given query, we talked about that. Data modeling, yep. So how to prepare? Go through the learning path. The learning path is free and you can get a discount on the exam. And it does a good job of covering what is actually in the exam. You still need to practice and go over it some more. And as you're going through it, you're going to find labs in some of these where you get into a lab environment, you're working in a terminal, and there's going to be code there, because if you're like me and you're trying to focus and go through it, I have a hard time focusing on a lot of things. And so on those, you can oftentimes just copy paste the code that they have there to pass through it. And then get to what really helps me is you have an Atlas account, so you have a MongoDB database, and create a project. And that's what I did. I created a project. I had a node backend. I created a connection to MongoDB and started writing out my CRUD operations, putting them in there. I created an aggregation pipeline, even built the front end so that I could tie it in and play with it. It was a good bit of fun going through trying to figure out how it all worked. And also, just read lots of Mongo code. That's the next thing, because if you can go through and you can read it and you can recognize what's wrong, then that's going to get you through the majority of the exam, being able to read it and know what's wrong as well as what's going to come out of it. So that is all that I have on how to pass this exam. Good luck, guys. Take care. And I hope you make it through all right.